Hi folks, welcome to the iWrite Radio podcast stroke videocast. Stewart is still convalescing somewhere up north, so it's just Jimmy Hutton and myself, Norrie Stewart, with you today. FMQs, and it really is FMQs, isn't it?
Yeah, aye.
Today, on a Wednesday.
All the fun of the fair at Holyrood today. Obviously, it was a bit subdued at the start, given the ongoing situation in Stonehaven. But Ruthie didn't let that stop her. She did try desperately to put the boot in. Unfortunately, she chucked it in her own mouth and left it there.
That was what I really liked about that was her saying it took Nicola Sturgeon all of 9 minutes to get political after she'd spent 9 minutes being political herself. What did she expect?
Exactly. Aye. I was impressed by the level of derision that was poured down upon her, though. It did gladden the heart of an old fat nationalist to see the Tory leader absolutely, she had that face like a bulldog licking the piss off an nettle straight away. She was just absolutely outflanked and made to look like the clown that she is, the saviour, the queen of the Britanats, and she was absolutely chasing her own tail after 2 minutes because she's useless.
I actually think I've got a quote here from that.
There were a few belters.
The First Minister to Ruth Davidson. I don't criticise anybody for wanting to serve in any parliament. I just have an old-fashioned preference that they get elected before they do so.
Aye, peach. But it was risible what she's coming out with. Tricky Dicky wasn't much better, The talk about not...
that quote is 20 years old.
Aye. But talk about not reading the room. I don't think I've seen a single pupil who's been interviewed on TV, or heard on radio, or seen in print that has had anything but praise for the decision taken yesterday by John Swinney. It's a decision.
There was one lassie on the BBC who I think had been interviewed, not yesterday, the day before, and been upset about her results, and then they re-interviewed her after the announcement, and she said she was delighted. So I remember thinking at the time, the BBC don't often get it right, but I think they got it right there.
Yeah, well, it's a decision that I don't necessarily agree with. I think that there will be issues with that decision over there'll be ramifications for years for that, because it's going to be this outlier that stands, that wrecks every stat that we have on education, on attainment. That one outlier will ruin everything. But there we go. It's a decision that they've taken. They've decided that the happiness and the contentment of the pupils of this year's exam cohort are more important. So at that point, boom. And as I say, for opposition politicians to be crying for John Swinney's head the day after taking that decision, that, by the way, has made the governments of England and Wales move their positions already, and they will move their positions more when their exam results are published.
In a different world, the headline would have been, Scottish Government forces Westminster to rethink exam results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that would be a world where journalists actually reported what was happening rather than having decided what slant they want to put in a story, squeezing the facts in to fit that slant.
Well, I wouldn't think that fact will even be mentioned. Although, well, that's not fair. Kirsty Walk brought it up on Newsnight last night. She said something along the lines of, will this force a rethink from Wales and England?
I suppose we should get some positive vibes heading Kirsty Walk's way now, because come next week she's going to take absolute pelters for you and I and Stewart. So might as well say something nice about her now.
I think so. Well, now that we've mentioned Kirsty Walk, I think we'll meander a bit today.
I didn't mind a bit of meandering, mate. It's a lovely day for it.
You reckon it's her husband that's making this documentary?
Yeah, I think that's...
Documentary in quotation marks.
Mm-hmm. I think that's why.
About the Alex Salmond trial.
Aye, it's her husband's production company that's put this thing together. presumably he has contacts with, I'm assuming, various people who've been all over this story. And it's coming out, but I think it's next Monday or Tuesday, I can't quite remember. But what annoys me is that Leslie Evans, the permanent secretary, the high-heed civil servant that frankly has been behind a lot of all this, she speaks to the Parliamentary Inquiry the day after this BBC mockumentary goes out. So how is that not going to colour what she has to say and how it's taken by the Parliament, the members of the committee? Because every single one of those committee members will watch that documentary the night before.
Well, I have a bit of a problem with this committee, because they're insisting that civil servants give oral evidence individually and not part of a panel of civil servants. They're also insisting that witnesses take the oath, as you do in a court of law. This looks like a court of law.
It's beginning to look like some kind of weird sham trial.
Aye, but it's got none of the safety measures that surround a court case. For instance, the BBC are running a documentary the night before.
Aye. And it's looking like
it looks like a kangaroo court.
It's beginning to look like the hatchet job continues. They've failed to get him through the civil service disciplinary procedure. They failed to get them to nail Mr. Salmond through the courts. And now it's beginning to look, this in particular with the BBC, trying to influence the parliamentary committee before it sits. This is beginning to look, like you say, like a kangaroo court. Is it a third time lucky? Is that what they're after?
I've got another question to ask on this one. Are any of the women who are anonymous going to be called in front of this committee?
Yes,
is my other question.
They are, and they will give evidence in camera. They will be kept, their anonymity must be protected whilst they say what they've got to say, although it'll be interesting to see. They have to be very careful, I'm assuming, because at the end of the day, they're under oath again, and they cannot.
Well, this case, especially the women maintaining their anonymity,
mm-hmm.
raises questions for me about whether that is fair on a person who has been found not guilty, in the sense that they are continuing to make their case. Are they deserving of the protection of the law at this point?
I'm not sure on it all, mate. I'm not sure on the legalities. I'm not sure on the
moralities
of it.
The position.
If they are going to come out and repeat allegations that have been found to be false in court, if they couldn't prove them, they couldn't make their case. If they're going to come out and repeat these allegations again, I'm going to have an issue with that, and I'm going to have an issue with the Scottish Parliament providing a platform to do so.
Well, I'm not even really talking about this particular case. I'm talking about the wider aspects of whether anonymity should apply to witnesses or accusers if they continue after a not guilty verdict. Does it not undermine the case of, a jury trial?
Well, that's going to be a major issue throughout this parliamentary inquiry, because the parliamentary inquiry sits after a legal trial's been held. They can't possibly they can't call into question the verdicts reached at that trial. If they do, they're undermining the entire Scottish legal system. I don't know what. I know what's meant to be achieved. What's meant to be achieved is finding out how this all happened. They're not really meant to be going into the allegations. They're meant to be going into how this all came about, how the disciplinary process failed so badly that we ended up with a court case, who approached Police Scotland to instigate an investigation that ended up in a court case, because what we were looking at was an internal Scottish government investigation that somehow
failed.
ended up in the courts. Aye.
But failed.
And cost, what, upwards of £1 million so far. I mean, £1 million, £1 million, mate. That feeds a lot of people that are hungry. It puts roofs over a lot of homeless people's heads.
Well, I would just like to congratulate our mainstream media who have managed to keep this pot boiling regardless of verdicts.
Aye. Mm-hmm. Aye, it's going to be an interesting wee week next week, mate. That's for sure. And we haven't heard from Mr. Salmond at all, who is adamant that we will hear his entire side of the story, including the stuff that the court chose not to hear. So it'll be interesting. I'm not quite sure when he's scheduled to appear in front of that inquiry.
Is he scheduled to appear in front of the inquiry?
Oh yeah, he will definitely make an appearance, mate. But Leslie Evans is the first one that I've known the actual day, and that, as I say, that's the day after the BBC.
I suppose they're going to have to ask him when he spoke to Sturgeon about it.
Yeah,
yeah,
they're going to have to. Yeah. I think that's what they're. Certainly, the opposition parliamentarians, they're desperate to find some a lie, basically, that Sturgeon has misled in some way the Parliament. And it's difficult because clearly, I think the argument is going to come down to whether Nicola Sturgeon met Alex Salmond as a private individual, whether it was a political meeting, whether it was party business, because if it's party business, she doesn't have to declare a meeting of party business to the Parliament.
Depending on how the direction this takes, it could be very interesting, because if they're going to say that the leader of the SNP couldn't meet the ex-leader of the SNP to discuss party politics as, SNP internal politics, internal policy surrounding this issue, that means every single party in Scotland is going to have to be prepared to put their dirty laundry in front of any investigation, which will be very interesting for the Tories. And
it would also mean that the party of government, if they're choosing to say that, the party of government is held to a standard higher than the opposition parties, because obviously civil service rules don't apply if you're in opposition. You're not working with the civil service and operating within those rules.
But that's kind of my point. If Sturgeon and Salmond had a meeting to discuss the impact of this inquiry, the civil service inquiry, on the party, which seems a legitimate and sensible thing to do to me,
yes,
and that is somehow vilified by the Holyrood committee, that opens the door to every time there's a misstep within a party, be it Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, Greens, whoever, that it means the door is then open for Holyrood committees to investigate.
Aye, it's a minefield, mate. It's a big a big vat of jobby, and everybody's got a stick in there, and they're all trying to stir it. And they're all trying to stir it in such a way as to make sure that if any of the shit sticks, it sticks to something that is not them.
Anything else that particularly caught your eye at FMQs?
Oh, there were a couple, mate. Wee Willie Fuddley was being particularly fuddy today.
That's Willie Rennie.
He asked a question as to why Test and Protect could not stop the spread of the virus in Aberdeen. I mean, does he not understand what Test and Protect actually is? Did he not see the photos? Hunters, folk queuing to get into bars. Test and Protect isn't going to stop the spread when people aren't obeying the guidelines that they've been asked to obey. It was a remarkably stupid question, but then you can't expect that from Willie. And, I mean, I think they all made donuts of themselves today. Ruth Davidson, we've never been in a position like this on August the 12th when kids didn't care whether they're getting a university place or no. We're in that position every year, though. Don't you understand what clearing is? He's absolutely made a pig's lug of that one. And then you've got Richard Leonard.
Well, she also asked it for the SQA to hand back the exam papers from the exams that weren't sat.
That well-known culture of secrecy that published their workings last week, and she was asking for the workings to be published. She seriously made a right mess of the day, but Richard Leonard maybe gets a wee badge because he brought up the Equality and Human Rights Commission. Now, that's the last 3 times he's had an opportunity to ask questions that he's brought up the Equality and Human Rights Commission. He must have a wee bit on the side that's working there or something, eh? Because it's not something that normally, they're not a group that normally get thrown into the cut and thrust of parliamentary debate.
Well, last week he was asking that their guidelines be taken into account on some policy issue. And I don't know. I
have issues with equality and human rights, mate. They tend to get thrown into people's faces when you've not got an argument. That's when you resort to saying, there's equality issues around this thing here, or you're infringing on somebody's rights. Usually that means you've lost the argument.
I'll tell you what it was. It was care homes, wasn't it?
It probably would have been.
It was care homes.
And then we got the joys of Paddy Harvey going on again about evictions. And I didn't ken where Paddy Harvey lives. It must be some green utopia somewhere that the rest of us didn't have access to. But he's making out that like every single tenant in Scotland should never ever have the threat of eviction hanging over their head, even if they didn't pay their rent or if they have a wee dirty protest in the lobby or something like that. They still shouldn't be evicted by the evil, crass landlord that should possibly be dressed up as a dragon for owning a house and renting it out to someone else. I genuinely didn't get what he's arguing. I mean,
his argument was what he wants is permanent legislation, but he can't say that out loud. So what he wants is for the Scottish government to say nobody will get evicted ever, which is the case till late September, when they're going to bring it back to Parliament and ask them to extend
it to March.
The law until March because of coronavirus. And he's standing up screaming and shouting about something that's not going to happen because eviction notices have been issued that can't be implemented because you can't do it.
There are still nightmare tenants out there. I mean,
and in all fairness, nightmare landlords.
But what's he saying here, mate? That if I nip up the stair and murder my neighbours, and my neighbour's wife was still staying in that gaff, I couldn't be evicted, so she's got to walk past me in the stair every day.
Well, exactly.
I mean, it's a nonsense argument that he's making, and frankly, he doesn't do his party any good when he comes out with these kind of things.
It's because he made himself look silly because he didn't just ask for a permanent law that said you can't be evicted. Because you can't ask for a law that says you can't be evicted because there are some nutcases out there renting property.
I mean, it's the same with the suggestion. There was a suggestion that Andy Whiteman put forward, and I've got a lot of time for Andy Whiteman. But the suggestion was that nobody should be evicted because of rent arrears that are run up during the coronavirus. And that's just a license for people who didn't pay their rent. And we all know there's folk out there that they take no responsibility for their lives whatsoever. They would just have stopped paying rent the minute that any legislation like that came into force. They wouldn't have paid a penny, and they'd sit in the house and say, but you can't evict me.
There's the other question Rennie asked on this was, what are you going to do about illegal evictions? I'm going to make them legal, or should we just make sure they stay illegal? I mean, what? They're illegal. So if the police know about it, they can do something about it.
I'll be honest with you, mate. I think Nicola Sturgeon must have walked through that chamber with a grin as broad as Princess Street, because the opposition, I mean, come on, maybe this morning's poll threw them off with the SNP having a 37-point lead over the Tories.
We need to talk about that. 74 seats, is it?
Aye, 74 seats, 57%. Tories on 20, Labour on 14, I think it was, and the Lib Dems on 8. So, aye, a fabulous poll. But they had a bad day the day, mate. And frankly, given everything that's happened over the last week, I think they've gone in there complacent, thinking, we've got her on the run, and she just absolutely put them over her knee and gave them a dashed good thrashing with the old table tennis bat.
Well, good stuff. Okay, what else popped into the news that caught your eye, James?
Oh, there's been a few things, mate. I wanted to just add to what we were talking about yesterday with Peter Bell and on Facebook and getting a wee bit of censoring from Facebook. That's now extended, mate. Scott Goes Pop has also had issues now. People reposting to his blogs, and it's now coming up. You're getting the wee Facebook covering over it saying this may be false content. That's only started happening this morning, but I'm wondering why on earth Facebook is deciding to take complaints from British nationalists seriously to the point where they're censoring independence-minded bloggers.
Well, I mean, if both Peter and I can't remember his name, Scott Goes Pop, are being censored, this is without doubt, as you were about to say, a concerted effort by the unionists.
It's the Integrity Initiative must have got another tranche of funding through, and they've decided that it's time for phoning up Nick Clegg, because let's be honest, if you work for the Integrity Initiative, you've probably got Nick Clegg on speed dial, and phoning him up at Facebook and saying, help us, the Scottish nationalists are going to scalp us. Maybe they've seen the poll, mate. Maybe that's why they decided to move.
Maybe, as I say, I don't use Facebook, so
I
tend to go to the websites.
Well, that's Peter effectively said that he's just going to delete his Facebook account. And if it's James Kelly, isn't it? Scott Goes Pop.
Yeah, James Kelly. Aye.
If other prominent indie-minded bloggers are going to start to be censored on Facebook, I do have an issue with it, actually, because I think Facebook, it's a massive platform and it's the easiest way to get stuff out there. But for the likes of you and I, the odd political geek, we'll still be able to go and find all that stuff. It's just a shame that you're suddenly being denied an opportunity to share.
But it's important that people who aren't political geeks get access. To other information.
What's next? Are they going to turn into Business for Scotland and say that your content, we think, is biased, so we're not going to carry it anymore? Because that stuff's vital to get out there.
Well, as I say, that's why they're doing it.
It begins to become a level of political interference that should be unacceptable in a Western democracy. Given how Facebook's everywhere, it's absolutely everywhere, and people do use it to share information. And frankly, I can't see how anybody can think, particularly James Kelly's work, but Peter's as well, is anything other than worthwhile. And it's viable. It's a decent.
Yeah, but that's why they don't want it out there. It'll be interesting to see if anybody in the mainstream media pick it up.
Aye, well, it will be interesting to see, because this could just be the start. Where are they going to stop? Am I going to get censored because I support independence? Am I going to get censored or maybe put off Facebook for a week because I shared a photo yesterday or last night of the new Imperial residence in New Street, where Boris has got a cabinet room in that, where somebody had, I don't know if you've seen it, mate, it's a massive 4-storey building with a Union Jack and over the 3 stories made up for this thing, but the bottom story is red, and some wag had just got the old spray can out, and Boris Johnson is a pure fanny. And it just was a brilliant addition to the picture. I thought it was a lovely comment on what people think of 40, 50 feet high Union Jacks in Edinburgh in this day and age.
You'll need to put it up on our WhatsApp.
I'll do that, mate. I'll share it to the WhatsApp thing.
Talking about Boris Johnson's government in Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they can't walk down the mile to appear in front of committees.
Yes, 36 minutes, I think they gave notice to the Parliamentary Committee this morning that they wouldn't bother to show up and defend themselves.
This is the committee looking into the power grab.
Yeah, it's looking into the internal market and the structures being put together. But this morning, I watched a bit of it, mate, and there was quite a lot about structures that already are in place, that this internal market, this white paper, looks to supersede. But one that I picked up on, paragraph 154, and it was actually Angela Constance that brought this to the attention of Mike Russell, and I'm pretty sure that Mike Russell has chewed upon paragraph 154 a few times and thrown it at a few Tories. But what it says in that white paper, key decisions will be put to the UK Parliament for approval. Therefore, the Welsh Senate, the Scottish Parliament and the Assembly at Stormont have no say. The key decisions will be made in London and approved in London. So if they're not if they're dressing it up as anything other than a power grab, they're lying. They're absolutely 100% lying to us.
And they will be put to the UK Parliament means the UK Tory Party will make the decision.
Yeah. Well, particularly for the next 4.5 years, eh? Aye, but it's I don't know, mate. They dress it up, and like you say, they don't want to be held accountable. They certainly don't want to be held accountable to us. I had a thought this morning, actually, in these half awake, lucid moments when you're thinking, oh God, I suppose I better move. But everything that's happening in this country comes from America these days. And at the heart of it all is Steve Bannon and how he got Trump elected. And, you know, when Trump says one thing one day and a different thing the next, half of the time it's deliberate. And you see them doing that here. You know, Boris will take one position, Gove will take another. It's all just to sow confusion. And what it's really about is what I think it's about is that they are trying to capitalise on people being pissed off with politics, because they want the least amount of people as possible to engage in politics.
To be interested.
Then they can do what they want. If we sit there and say, politicians are all the same, well, politicians aren't all the same, or they certainly shouldn't be. But if we're saying things like that, that means we're no longer willing to pay attention, and they can do exactly what they want. They can lie with impunity, where 20, 30 years ago, if you got caught lying in UK politics, your career was over. Nowadays, you get...
Oh, I'm old enough to remember those days when there was honour and there was a moral compass, supposedly in the pocket.
I remember Lord Carrington resigning as Defence Secretary because he got it wrong over the Falklands. He thought there was no danger that the Argentinians would invade the Falkland Islands, even though he was told they were about to. He still thought there was no danger because he didn't think they had the capability to do so. But he was the last politician in the UK to resign on principle. Since then, you do what you want. And frankly, the Tories trying to make it look as though Douglas Ross resigned on principle. Nonsense. That was all planned to take that job.
Do you know, it was actually Holyrood Mandy on Twitter. They've got a podcast now, the Holyrood magazine. And it was, she hit on that in their last podcast. She suggested this could have been a long-term plan where to give Douglas Ross some sort of kudos, some sort of moral backbone, it was decided he would resign with a view to ousting Carlo, which was another dig the First Minister had at Ruth Davidson today.
Aye, because Ruth Davidson had the temerity to talk about loyalty to your party members, and Mrs. Morell, Miss Sturgeon just turned around and said, "I'm not sure that party loyalty to your colleagues is a strong suit for you, Ruth." The Douglas Ross thing, mate, I kind of half think that might be right. It maybe was all thought through to make him look like he's his own man and he's got the strength of character and be able to lead the Tories. But I've seen him referee football matches, and he's not got a backbone, mate. He hates to make decisions. He's one of these. He's yellow through and through. So I think he just decided that he genuinely couldn't stand up and defend Dominic Cummings. He couldn't. And so he thought, Kenmore, I'm not wanting the Scottish office job. This is too hard for me. But making him Scottish Party leader might very well be Dominic Cummings' revenge, because he's the only Tory in that Parliament that came out and was in any way critical, really, of Dominic Cummings.
Aye. Might have set
By
him up
being
for a
Scottish
bad
Party,
fall.
but by being Scottish Party leader and moving to the Scottish Parliament, Dominic Cummings removes that only Tory from Westminster.
True.
And let's be honest, Dominic
Cummings, I believe his intention is to remain an MP.
Yeah, I think that will take about approximately 5 minutes after he gets pumped in the Scottish elections in May, before Cummings says, you're standing down, son, because you need to go to Scotland and fight the good fight and bring us back up for whatever tawdry position he leaves them in next May.
Well, that's all to look forward to. There's a wee bit chat floating about. Again, I maybe picked this up from the Holyrood magazine podcast about if there's another spike, would that be a reason to cancel the Holyrood elections next year?
It would have to be a pretty big spike, because let's be honest, we're looking at what? How many deaths per week in the United States, and they're still going to run a presidential election.
True.
So
True.
by next May, I would expect. I can't see them cancelling the election, mate. Apart from anything else, the direction the polls have been going in for the last year and a half.
I'm talking about.
We could be at 65% by the time we get to
I'm actually not talking about the Scottish government doing it. I'm talking about the Westminster government doing it.
It's not within their remit to cancel a Scottish election, mate. It'd have to be done. It'd have to be a decision taken by Holyrood.
Well, on that cheery note, anything else?
Yeah. I don't think John Swinney needs advice for you and I, but I was thinking that all he needs to do on Thursday with this no confidence vote is just to collate news reports from BBC, ITV, Channel 4 during the day at how much chaos there is in England and Wales after the results come out, and just present that to people. Just say, look, I've admitted fault. We've now put in a position where the teachers are happy, pupils are happy, parents are happy, and take a look at what's happening elsewhere. Because the Labour Party and the Tories can't really have a dig at them, because right on Thursday, their counterparts down south will be up to their knees in complaints.
I have a sneaky feeling that by accident, politicians have discovered that being prepared to admit a mistake is a good thing for the electorate.
Let's be honest, both him and Sturgeon got a fairly good press on national news last night. Certainly BBC, the Channel 4 had a horrendous wee attack piece by Kieran Jenkins again, but you can't expect that for that wee weasel these days. But basically the main commentators were kind of impressed by the fact that Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney admitted fault and set out to do something to sort it out.
Yeah, because it ceases to be a headline. The first time you say it, it's a headline. You can repeat it as much as you want after that. The headline.
Aye. I noticed that Nicola Sturgeon, she inveigled in most answers for the first half hour of the day. Good one.
Yeah.
The other thing, Norrie, was the economic news this morning. Officially into recession.
The biggest recession since somebody made up the word recession.
Exactly. I mean, I'm surprised folk aren't calling it a depression. I take it there's been a memo out around every news in the country, newsroom in the country, saying do not use depression, use recession, because There's a 20.4% drop in output, which is 10 times worse than we've seen in 2008. And double what other G7 economies are seeing.
It'll be interesting to see if Brexit is mentioned in any of the press about this.
Mm-hmm.
Because there will be a part of that number that's due to Brexit.
There'll also be, I mean, they desperately talked about how there was a little bump back up the way in June. Because they didn't really want to talk about how big a drop there was in April and May.
Well, June was the beginning of coming out of lockdown, wasn't it?
It was, aye. But
so there was bound to be a bump.
But what I think, mate, a massive downturn like that, and we're going to see huge unemployment figures as furlough comes to an end. We're going to see masses of people laid off. And then we might, who knows, we might get a bump. We might start climbing out of things. And then in January, we're going to get another slam in the dish with Brexit.
But look on the bright side. We can get lots of people swimming the channel with little waterproof boxes on their back. So they might not have to open the lorry park to wait on the ferries to get them through customs.
I think the channel might be too busy with folk coming the other way, certainly according to the English press it is.
And my God, sir, I can walk across the channel on the back of dead immigrants and desperate working class people trying to make a living.
It's one way to get your fish to market, eh?
Aye. Well, take you a bit too long, I think.
I think the fish might be off.
Aye. Call it a day at that, James.
Aye, seems so, mate.
Well, thanks, Jimmy Hutton. I'm Norrie Stewart. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, which is the day before Friday, which is Hat Friday, just to remind you folks. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch up with you all tomorrow. Cheers for now. Oh, I'm in the wrong mode to turn this off. Thanks for listening, folks. Cheers for now.